Welcome, everyone, to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, of course, joined by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. How is everyone doing tonight?
I'm tired.
You're tired.
I'm doing good.
I feel you, Diggs. I'm tired as well. Hopefully everything is running smoothly as opposed to last week. So it seems to be. This episode is questions. So anyone who is following the Ashes of Creation knows that Steven Shreve has been doing kind of a whirlwind tour with several different streams. So I'm going to throw it to you, Diggs, because I think you're the one that's been paying the most attention. I've just not had a lot of time this week. So there you go.
So just a couple of news things. We did get a blog on scientific nodes since the last time we did a show, I believe. And what was the other news? Oh, forums are back up. But I've been busy. So I'm Mondays and Wednesdays, I've got 6 hours of dance, 4 hours of dance rehearsal, and 4 hours of dance class and 2 hours of dance rehearsal plus work. So I'm pretty wiped. But I have not had time to hang out on the forums because I'm sleeping or working when I'm not dancing. But Steven's been making the rounds, and he was on with Simmerg, Dungeon Crawler Network, Jalon, and with just now, like an hour ago, with the Golden Feather. So I have a couple of question and answers from the Golden Feather. Actually, my favorite question from the Golden Feather so far was, and I only have a couple, like I said, was they asked him, outside of gaming, what does he like to do to socialize, or like for, free time or something? And he was like, outside of gaming? Outside of gaming.
It's actually an interesting question.
Yeah, it was like, well, I play board games. That's pretty much it. So that was a pretty fun question for him. But
it's not surprising.
Yeah, I mean, he's been playing.
I guess a little surprising
7.
consider what he did, before all this. But anyways,
he's been playing since he was 7, so it makes sense that he'd be doing that. So I just have some questions that I've gathered from some of the previous ones, just to see and answers, just to see what you guys think about them, and if they will spur some conversation. So the first one I have is from Simmerg's show. The question was, given citizenship takes priority, what happens when 2 guild members of opposing nodes are at a node war? And the answer was, then the 2 guild members are at war with each other. The objective is to provide players with choice so they can choose who they want to support. The reason citizenship is higher than guilds and other The reason citizenship is higher than guilds and other player agency. This is due to the fact that nodes are the core of a multitude of systems. Hence, they are paramount in the affiliation hierarchy. So it's normal for conflict to exist between family, friends, and guildmates, which sounds really kind of cool, for wanting conflict. And we've said before how we're not sure that guilds are gonna, we're choosing guilds so early. People are thinking that they're gonna band together all the time, but I think it seems like there will be opportunities for these outside guilds to find themselves in conflict with each other.
Yeah, I don't know. I could see an argument either way. I wonder if it's just easier in design, but I would tend to think guilds would stick together before everything, right? That you're not necessarily a citizen of a node to be a citizen of the node. Maybe you're there for the perks that you have. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it could create some interesting scenarios.
Just because you're a citizen and they're a citizen of the same place, but you're in different guilds, doesn't mean you can't feud. It just means that you're not going to be battling between the lines of two different cities or nodes or whatever it would be, that if you're both citizens of the same place, it's just, I would imagine, just considered infighting and not something that's going to potentially threaten the sovereignty of the place from the impact of an outside force. Now, if you've got a guild that exists both in and outside the place, and they're throwing resources from outside into the area, then at that point, I'm not necessarily even sure if we can say that the whole of the guild itself is represented as citizens. The individuals who are, might be, but again, if it then comes down to that choice of like, well, are you going to back up the people on the side of the city, or are you going to back up your guild who's representing an outside force now? It should be interesting to see how that gets
guilds
resolved.
should exist across cities, across like metropolises, right?
Well, they should, for sure.
So it's a little bit hard for me to think that, well, you're forced to go against your guild, because I feel like guilds would be closer knit. Like if you have a guild that's across, say, 4 different metropolises, I feel like they would be more likely to stick together than 2 different guilds in the same metropolis. So I don't know, but I mean, it could that will create a lot of interesting scenarios if some, because obviously I would feel like if you are a big guild, you're going to want to be able to do everything. And we got a little bit of it was the scientific nodes, which maybe we'll get to, a little bit more insight into what benefits you will potentially get. So there'll be reason to have members in all of these different metropolises as this guild, just to get everything.
If all you do is defend your property and your claims, and whatever else happens, I could see that being a way that guilds who exist in multiple places go by. Is that we're here, this place is being attacked. Obviously, we need to put up some sort of defense, but we're just gonna defend our own property and our holds. We're not actually going to commit people to the front line. So if they get this far, we're going to defend our stuff so it doesn't get burnt down like the rest of the place.
Well, even before that, right? So if you have somebody who's very invested and they know they learn that one metropolis, because they have a guild there, guild presence, that they are going to declare war on another metropolis, like this gets into sort of spying, right? So how do you do they? It creates some interesting scenarios. Like, what do they work to thwart one metropolis that they belong to as a guild from invading, or one city from invading another? Like, it just could create a lot more interesting scenarios. Or if they're unsuccessful, or maybe they purposely try to dispose of someone, but. Although that would be kind of shooting yourself in the foot, but it does create. I can see where it'd probably be more interesting to say, okay, you're a citizen before you're a guild, because at least for me, I guess this is just old school thinking. I always think of the power line with the guilds, right? You always think of the biggest guilds as running servers, which that's not how this will be, right? This will be more of the metropolis. Whoever runs the servers. So I guess it's going to take a different frame of mind for me to kind of wrap my head around. But it could create a lot of interesting, like, and we had kind of talked about this too. Like, do we know if we'll be forced to fight?
Sorry, you got out there. Forced to
fight. So if a third of my guild is in one metropolis that is about to be attacked, and I have an interest in not, but I have another third that belongs to the metropolis that is attacking the second one. Like, do I have to participate? Can I sabotage in other ways? I mean, it's just, I don't know.
I don't know that you have to participate.
That's going to be up to the guild leaders.
Yeah, if you decide to, pack everything up and get the hell out the opposite way of where the invaders are coming from, perhaps your guild has already secured the exit route and you already know where you're going and everything's set. So, you're not going to be disturbed either way. I could definitely see that being a way to go.
I guess,
You might lose the actual buildings, but if you're allowed to keep everything else, that's pretty good. And if the buildings stay after, you might be able to negotiate a deal to just move right back in.
well, I guess part of it is me not knowing fully how the systems will all work. So we know that for say vassals of a metropolis, as you level up, you get to your level cap. Any further experience, whatever, goes to actually who you're a vassal of. So if someone has declared war, I guess I don't know how resource management will work. Like, does a portion of whatever you're gathering, is there a way for the person who is ruling your metropolis to take part of that? I guess I just don't know how that works. I know we know of taxes. So I didn't know if there would be any sort of soft or other ways that you're sort of forced, quote, forced to participate somehow to the siege, if there was a way to not do that. Like, could you say,
don't have to participate if you don't want to.
Well, and I don't mean actively. I mean more like, I guess I just don't know how that will work. Like, how do they do resources to build things? Like, is that entirely volitional? Like, I actually give you what I'm going to let you use, or can they impose some sort of similar tax to actually take part of your resources? So I go gather trees. The leader of the metropolis is now declared, we're going to have war. I'm going to take 10% of whatever you cut down. Like, I guess I don't know, and I don't know that that's even been talked about, and that might not even be a thought on anyone's mind. I guess I don't know if it's a voluntary thing or if the leader of that node can make you contribute besides just money. Because I assume that's what they mean by taxes, right? It's going to be in some form of monetary
it seems
value.
like it would be a tax of money.
So I don't know. Even then, like, can you just say, hell no, I'm not giving you any money?
I don't think you can say no. I think if you don't want to pay the taxes, then you leave the town and stop being a citizen and go somewhere else where you think the taxes are better.
And again, I guess that's me not knowing exactly where the taxes come from, right? So is it I go out and to a dungeon, I loot a treasure chest, and all of a sudden, 10% of that disappears into the treasury? Or do I take that back, and at some point it just disappears from inventory? So, is there a way to stop contributing, like say, okay, we're just going to not do anything for your for you right now? It's just a lot of questions that.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But yeah, I think to me it seems like the tension is going to be about whether or not the end game guilds are giving you the benefits that you want or the benefits that you need, which might be different than what the outside guild leaders are into. And you might have differences about how you feel about your node versus how the outside guild leaders feel about your node. So I think that's going to cause some tension with the outside guilds.
And it's really about
outside guilds versus inside guilds is going to be more contentious than what people realize at the moment.
Well, and I guess that really the only motivation other than just pure mayhem to siege is if you want something built that your leader decided not to build, I guess. I wish there were more motivations than that, but and again, I
think there's.
I mean, people will probably do it just for the hell of it, but I guess just a lot of unknowns. How particular can you get? How varied can you get with your node? How much will it really matter ultimately to lose what you have? I don't know.
One of the things that's kind of interesting to me, though, is that he said that the prime time for the server is when sieges are allowed to happen.
For nodes.
Yeah, for nodes. So it's one of those things where you're not going to see a node war occur at the dead of night. You're not going to get like the text message frantically at 1 a.m. Dude, the guild's under attack. You got to get online and defend it, bro. Dude, where you at? You're a main tank. Come on, bro. Oh, we're losing everything, man. This is your fault. Yeah, none of that shit.
That'd be good.
It's only going to be happening in prime time, so the worst FOMO is, oh, geez, I can't make it on for this specific raid, but I'm sure there'll be plenty more I can attend.
Yeah.
So have we? This might be a stupid question. I just don't remember because I've been honestly more focused on the other game. Do we know how many servers? Like East, West, Oceanic, European? Okay. The reason I ask is if it's all prime time, then you eventually, as the world develops, could probably have a siege of some sort being streamed like almost pretty frequently, right? And
no,
be interesting.
because there's cooldown times for sieges.
Well, that's why I was wondering how many servers there'd be.
But yeah, we don't know how many servers per region there will be.
Cool.
So the next question I had from Simmerg was about mastery certifications for professions like artisan. Do you have to be a citizen to obtain that certification? And Stephen said there are 3 states of access that nodes offer: non-affiliated, just a person passing through; affiliated, a person who's progressed in some organizations and quests in the city, but still not a citizen; and then full citizenship. And that mastery certifications are available via affiliated and citizenship. So you might have to do some quests and earn some reputation with the city in order to acquire the mastery certification. So,
have they said what that does? Like what it allows? This because I read that and I'm actually glad that question was asked because that was one of the things that came to mind. Mm-hmm. It didn't really say in the post what that necessarily meant, right? Whether it's better quality crafting or more variety of crafting. I mean, I assume that's what it is.
Yeah, probably better recipes.
The reason I ask is because let's say you get to the what were the examples used? There was what college and a university. I don't remember what stage 3 was called. But anyways, so my curiosity was if you say you're at a stage 5 and you do get a mastery in something, and then there's a siege and that node disappears. Like, do you all of a sudden, are you no longer a master of whatever you were? Do you have to go prove to a different node, or does that carry over to a different node? Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess it wouldn't carry over, but does it make it easier to obtain that somewhere else if you can, I guess, demonstrate that? That was sort of my question with that.
Right. Because seems like some of that would be access to recipes, and if it's access to recipes, you should retain those. But we'd have to see what services are available. So I think that's what you would lose as the node D levels, is access to particular services. Same would be true if it if it's losing because monsters have attacked, and you lose those battles too. Some of the services will be shut down, so you might not have access to everything that you need to perform at a master level.
Because it did also, from that post, look like there will be different hierarchies of workbenches or whatever, different quality that you can use. So maybe, I guess, mastery is somehow tied into being able to utilize better equipment.
Honestly, this mastery system seems a little weird. I understand if you need to be of a mastery level before they'll allow you to be licensed to do certain things, like in old timey full plate mail England, for example. A common person couldn't just buy a suit of plate mail if somehow they had the financial means. Likewise, somebody who is a blacksmith who potentially would know how to make one if they, learn how to make each individual part and put it all together and shape it to people over a period of time, still wouldn't be really legally allowed to make it because they're considered, tools of war that are controlled by the state. So to that extent, it could be that you have to be of mastery level just to be able to access the recipes, because you below that, you're not license to, be accessing that stuff. You haven't proven yourself, you haven't proven your loyalty, etc. And so to that extent, I could see something where if you've had a mastery certification somewhere before and you get ousted and somebody else has a place that has that level of mastery available, that you go back and you show your expired mastery. It's like, hey guys, I just got to become a citizen and I can get on your mastery program, right? You guys want to streamline that, right? Yeah, let's do that. I could see that being the sort of thing that you want to, immediately find the next closest place that's friendly and hopefully stable that will be able to support the mastery system. And obviously, if you're in like one of the vassals of a bigger node, and there's another vassal that's equally sized, kind of on the other side of it, that you can move over to. Yeah, keeping things within the same general hierarchy, the same general region, I would imagine it'd be a much easier transition process than if you just went clear across the world and try to set yourself up over there. But I while you were talking, I was just thinking about, gosh, what's like the real life context of it? It would be like, being able to get licensed and bonded and carry insurance and stuff. And I don't know if the game's actually going to go to that level of detail. I don't know. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll go full on Eve with contracts.
Yeah, the way it was presented, and it wasn't real specific, but the way you look at how each node, what is new at each tier, I assume mastery is access to recipes, new, but also access to the equipment to use them, like you're saying. So I would have to assume that once you learn those recipes, you know those recipes. The question would be, if your node's destroyed, you would know the recipes, but you wouldn't have the equipment to use it. And then, like you're saying, how do you actually? Okay, so what's the next? At the next node, I certainly hope it's not starting all over. Maybe it is, but maybe you've gained enough skill that you can one-shot everything the whole way through. I don't know, but I assume when a node delevels or disappears, that it's going to be the access to the equipment that becomes more of an issue.
If it's a matter of like state control or whatever, I feel like somebody who has the skills and has the tools but isn't of the citizenship level, could that be a way that you get corruption from crafting? That you're doing something that you're not allowed to be doing, so you're still giving corruption for it because you're making something that's basically not authorized?
I doubt it.
I doubt it too.
Or can you break the machine? Can you choose to let me? I say, hey, I'm good at this. You say, oh, okay, you seem like it. You go ahead and use this, brand new, wonderful machine, and then can I actually, I doubt it will be that detailed, but then I break it, right? That would be kind of funny, actually. But that'd be a cool way to sabotage things. But anyways.
Yeah, throw like gallium or something in that just corrodes the materials.
It's like, I lied. Sorry.
It seems like the problematic part for me comes when you stop being a citizen of a node, because it sounds like you have to start over from what Stephen seems to say. The status that you accrued in one node as a citizen goes away if you drop your citizenship there and go over to another one, and you have to kind of start over. But I'm hoping that's not starting over completely from scratch, because it does seem like if you're a master farmer or a master gatherer and whatever, it should at least be easier for you to progress than if you had never been a master at all. But
yeah, I really hope mastery is not at all tied to the number level or whatever it is, that it means other things in it.
So the next question I have, also from Simmerg, is how is a legendary freehold schematic different from regular schematics? Different tiers are different how? And Steven says, the idea we currently have is via ZOI, Zone of Influence, that freeholds exist in. Each building type and service will have a legendary feature that can be unlocked. The idea behind this feature is to grant it to specific freeholds within a ZOI. because the freeholds need to be tied to a ZOI. Each metropolis will have an allotment of legendary freehold bonuses that they can allot to freehold. So those freeholds will have access to it. It will be a mix of first come, first serve and performance related factors to acquire them. So after the timer ends, the legendary slot goes back to the node and players try to obtain it again. So it's legendary in the way that it's limited and has to be cycled.
Okay.
That seems pretty fascinating for freeholds, especially since you might want to have a legendary tavern, Phantom.
I mean, I guess, well, that would be SOG, but legendary farm.
Oh, legendary farm. Okay.
Yeah, SOG wants to be the tavern owner.
Okay.
I mean, my first thought about, recycling is that seems like a terrible idea. But I guess thinking about it now, waiting a second, I guess it adds more variety to it. I mean, that will be kind of nice. So, not just that more people will be able to do it, but also I guess that you could do multiple different things.
And the follow-up to that was is a freehold earned through lore and story, or is it purchased? And Steven says that the freehold flag, which has to be placed in the open world, is available to be granted at stage 3 nodes. There's a quest line and material component cost for the player to fulfill.
So I guess when he says granted, that's not by whoever's leading the node. It's just by completing the task.
Mm-hmm.
So
one question. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, going back, so with the legendary thing, he said part of it will be granted, but is that by the person who's ruling? Because that's with the Metropolis level, right? So
that's what.
So they get to a lot. They get to pick.
It says some of it is first come, first serve. So I don't think.
Yeah, that part wouldn't be. But then after that, you said that there's performance.
Performance related. Performance related doesn't seem like that's from the government either. The governors themselves. And it says it's timer ended. It's timer based. So
I don't know. It depends on what it does. I mean, quite honestly, he didn't say anything about how long you would have. He just said it will eventually run out. Didn't say it's like a week.
Be a timer and
I wonder if it's going to be like seasonal things, like a holiday event area will be like a legendary freehold that can appear and be around for a period of time. So that would actually be a really easy way to do it. Or if they wanted to do like in-town dungeons, like, oh, this, you put this place down. Oh no, it's actually an infested sewer system with giant rats and everything, and like there's were-rats and a necromancer down there. Holy crap, how'd that happen? You gotta go clear it out now. I'd love to see that sort of stuff be how they use it, that it's a way to infuse unique content into the game or into specific areas where it's done in a way that feels natural, like it's being placed there. It's being decided that this is going to happen. It isn't just like, randomly stumbling upon it, or again, that somebody's just buying content for that area. Though that could be a lucrative model if they need to, is like, oh yeah, just buy these things and you can, kind of cater, customize some of the content in the area for periods of time as we make it available.
That's sort of my thought is like, what does it do? I mean, if it does it, how does it benefit me? Does it benefit me, or does it benefit the node, right? So if I'm not like, does it provide some sort of benefit to the other citizens? I don't know what it would be, but what actually is the benefit? Because if it doesn't really do a whole lot for me, then I honestly don't know that I want to waste however much time per week it's going to take to go get it again.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. I would expect that it would be something that's going to benefit.
I would hope. Yeah, I mean, I would hope it'd be like something. I don't know. Maybe I make flour and it's some sort of special mill that for a limited period of time increases my output or something like. If it's clearly beneficial, then yeah, that'd be great. But if it's something else, I don't know. the flour you make adds a bonus to whoever eats the cake that gets, something that's not really going to benefit me necessarily. I don't know. Is it worth the time or not? I don't know. But we just don't know enough.
So I guess I'm going to move on to one of the other shows. But the last question from Simmer that I'm glad to have this answer is, will each race have unique language dialect that other races cannot understand? And Stephen says, no, language system is not in our roadmap, and we don't see it being a feature, which I'm actually glad, since we don't have hard-coded factions. I'm glad that all the races will be able to understand each other rather than being locked out.
Jokingly, I say everybody having different language is some old biblical crap. Oh, we built this tower and then we're punished by it for having to speak different languages. Blah blah blah. So I'm fine with everyone being able to communicate freely. That's one of my earliest and actually personal politically driving things that I've always appreciated about video games is the idea that to be able to communicate with somebody else, you don't have to put in money and dial a number or anything like that. You just say, "Hey, how's it going?" And
what language do you say that in?
Usually English.
Okay.
But usually that's what my servers that the games I play are connecting to, so people speak English. So hey, it works out. But that's.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it's nice to be able to have sub languages and stuff as content between guilds or between citizens or whatever, to be able to have that extra layer of either the RPing aspect of it, or you're foreigners in a different area on a mission. You're speaking the dialect, the language that you guys know, because you don't want the other people around you to know what the hell you're talking about. So I could see something like that being, especially through text chat. It's, of course, much more difficult through voice chat unless your voice is modulated and their voice is modulated for everybody else, but people who understand the language don't have any modulation. It would be kind of a fun way to do it, but
EverQuest
weird and trippy. Go ahead.
I was just saying, EverQuest 2 drove me nuts with this. Like the first, you get a drop and then, oh, cool. Oh, can't understand what's happening yet, so I have to go get 10 more. And the first time, it's okay, this is kind of cool. But after you do it 2, 3, 4, it just is annoying. It's just let me get on with the quest already.
Yeah. And I wouldn't mind it for written stuff, I guess, if you were going to get a skill that you could increase to decipher written script. But people are going to be using Discord chat and Twitch chat and other kind of stuff, Skype anyway, to communicate. So there's not enough advantage.
That's a good point. That's sort of a different question, that what you just said, deciphering old text, because part of the lore, right, is that we're coming back into a world, we start to uncover things. So I guess that sort of would probably not apply to this question. They're two different things.
Yeah.
Because that would be interesting. Sort of a lore master of some sort.
One of the guilds has deciphered the runes that are being used on some of the artwork. So the Dwarven Castle. So there's a set of runes that are based on, I forget, not Germanic. But they can be deciphered, and they found a way to decipher them. I think the one that they did decipher was not only in runes, but written backwards. I think it might have been temporary or something. It was something really dumb, but test text or something. I don't know.
That's actually kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
It's well, just put, test text. Okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to move on to Jalon. He asked, we know that apartment buildings can be targeted independently in sieges, as can freeholds. Are there any special rules for in-node housing and sieges? And Stephen said, any building within a node during a siege can be damaged. When damaged, its services, NPCs can be interrupted for a time. You can repair them once the siege is complete. So that's kind of...
Any structure?
Any building within a node during a siege can be damaged.
Which would include freeholds.
I think
because
so, yeah.
we talked about this last time. We were operating
during
under
a siege.
But what we had talked about was after a siege was completed, you had 2 hours.
I think that's the case.
So this sounds sort of different than what he just said.
As can freeholds, but this was asking specifically about in-node housing.
Well, it's still be freeholds.
So I don't know that I think this wasn't focused on freeholds, but I'm not sure. Then Jalan, go ahead.
Sorry, what was it too? You said resources would be interrupted?
It's services and NPCs.
Okay. Which
okay. If I don't think I can win the siege, can I run through the node and prevent you from destroying buildings? Steven says yes. Even if you lose the siege, you can still try to defend things. Jalan asks, are airships going to be instance loading screens or a ship ride in real time? And Steven says the goal is to have an actual ship ride in real time. I think being able to see the world from a different perspective is a fun experience. Can events happen on the airship? And Steven said, no, right now, no, but we might in future content. That would be really nice. I think one of the negatives of ship rides is not having things to do on the ship. That could also help with RP. Kind of like even when I watched Nero play Sea of Thieves. Is that what you guys?
Yep, that was Sea of Thieves.
And you had different positions on the ship, and and Ombwa he was steering, but he was about to steer the ship and couldn't see where he was steering. So
yeah, because you got to keep the sails out of their face, or otherwise you got to have somebody actually navigate it. Yeah, definitely. Honestly, the thing that I thought about when you were saying that was taking the ferry in Washington across to wherever there's like 2 or 3 different ferry crossings. And when you get on the thing, you see, it's, you got this place where you can pull all your cars in. You just park there. There are restaurants and stuff. Honestly, I could see there being shops and restaurants and, commerce and that sort of stuff. If it's a large, luxury transportation vehicle that's, getting a bunch of people across at a decent price and supposed to entertain them along the way, I could see adding stuff. I could see actually potentially getting your character some sort of a job wherever one of the places that's stationed, being able to get, I don't know if it would be a kind of like the mastery sort of thing where you have to be a citizen and then, get a certain certification or whatever to be able to go back and forth. But basically your flight attendants or in-flight commerce people, that could be a really fun sort of thing. I just don't know the scale of these airships, what we're talking about here. Are we talking about, like a little two-sail sort of ship that's not really going to hold a lot of people? Or are we talking about these big gargantuan things that are just going to hold like tons and tons of people because you expect like entire guilds are going to be transporting their stuff on them every now and then?
It's an interesting question because actually just this week, Pantheon had put up a Twitter post about, it's like an informal poll, flying mounts, regular mounts, no mounts, and why. And almost overwhelmingly, now I think that game obviously caters to a very different group of people, but almost overwhelmingly it was like no flying mounts. And a lot were like just no mounts at all. Which is really old school. The reason I bring this up, I just, if they're making airships not a loading screen, is sort of how long will you be on that airship? Because my response was, well, in today's time, I feel like you should find other opportunities to make the world feel big, other than making me spend 2/3 of my game time running to where I'm wanting to go. Now, I guess from that post, it sounded like airships would probably be fairly quick, since it's sort of not the same as teleportation, but it's sort of in the same vein between the scientific nodes. So I assume it would be somewhat fast, but I hope it is anyways.
I'm hoping that it would be great if they would have crafting stations on there that people could use as an activity. But I think one of the differences should be from WoW and other strictly theme park MMORPGs is that we won't be doing the exact same quests. So we will have reason to have discussions with other players. What did you do today? What's going on in this area? What's going on in that area that you haven't visited? What's new? How have things changed? So hopefully at least there will be topics to discuss rather than just everybody sitting and dancing because there's nothing else to do except.
Do you really think people are going to want to talk? I'm just kidding.
I'm hoping so. I hope people will talk since, when everybody does the exact same quest, you have nothing to talk about.
Well,
funny you should say that, because I think about one game that's one of my mainstays, that end game for it is fashion. Sure, we all play the same quests over and over and over, but everybody knows that fashion frame is the end game for Warframe. Like, doesn't matter what mastery rank you are, if you look pretty, you win. So to that extent, I think a lot of what people will talk about is just fashion sense and, complimenting each other on, their appearance and having that be a point of conversation, seeing what they're wearing, seeing what they're doing, and having that as a point of conversation. It seems like the sort of game where just making connections in general and saying hi to people is something that will potentially happen more, obviously, if it's something people actually do regularly and expect behavior. Obviously, if we're just talking on Skype or Discord with the people that we know and not interacting in-game whatsoever, we're not going to be able to have that same experience. But at the same time, I feel like that's going to be something that you're just not going to be able to do, because you have to be cognizant of what's going on in the environment around you and be able to communicate with people in your surroundings, because you never know, who's going to not necessarily jump you, but who's going to, one-up you in some way or another, block your advancement, etc.
Well, I just think because it's dynamic, you're going to want to know what, are the same mobs in the same area? You're just going to want to know what's going on in different areas.
Right. I mean, they're saying in later in Jalen's stream that if you know that there's a place that, like a new dungeon or something that's been discovered, you hit the library and learn about the enemies, you'll have buffs and you'll have advantages when you go into that place to fight them. Mm-hmm. Nice. So, I mean, that's great. I love that.
Yeah, actually, I was going to mention that.
Yeah, libraries actually do give you some advantages.
So they actually give a buff, not just knowledge.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. You get useful knowledge. Doomfet says in chat, mounts should only be allowed at, let's say, 10 levels under max. Not having mounts makes the world feel huge until getting it. Nah. Yeah, well, we have different tiers of mounts, so that should help some too.
I think as a financial resource, that should be the biggest limitation. If you can afford to have a mount, then you get to have a mount. If we're talking about having a badass war horse that can wear barding and will, support your lance charge into a pack of baddies, that's going to be something that, you would likely have to earn through, extensive training, combat, and leveling and such. And, I would imagine it's going to be a much more expensive sort of thing. Again, going back to the idea of who's actually able to make plate mail, who's actually going to be able to make barding for your horse. So, that's going to be a much more limited sort of role. And I would imagine just in general, would be restricted to the higher level people because you're not going to pour those resources in someone that's just going to go out and die in the first wave. So I could imagine there being different levels of, mount on that extent. Not that one goes faster or slower based on your level, but what their purpose, what their specificity. Is it a draft horse? Is it, are you going to be pulling stuff around? Is it just to ride, light loads only? Is it a combat trained horse that you can actually expect to do something in battle?
I think it was Vanguard, right? Vanguard had
Vanguard. You could
add to the mounts.
Be a diplomat or a crafter, and you could get the mounts just the same as somebody who was fighting.
Well, but I meant you could add to them based off how you wanted the mount to work.
Yeah.
So the follow-up response, they make it where you can only get a mount from someone who has animal herding, and that's their profession. I'm fine with that. I'm not saying, you make it easy to have a mount. My argument is there are other ways to make the world feel big and other ways to slow. Because when I think of running from one point to another, there's only two things that come to mind. One is it helps make the world feel big, which it can. And two is it helps slow down the leveling process so people don't cap out as quick. I feel like there are better ways to do both. So.
Yeah, and my problem with the way we're socializing in these games now, like when I played, especially when I played Wizard 101, we would schedule after streams, we would get together and have parties. I think we would do this for Landmark as well. You'd have a stream, and then we'd go find some place to party with the people who were in the stream. Sometimes that was with the devs. The devs would show up. And if I have to run for, like you said, 20 or 30 minutes, and the devs are only going to be around for 30 minutes after a stream, then you miss the party. I don't want to have to, there should be some way to get to places reasonably in less than 20 minutes, especially if you think that a person's, lots of people who have kids may only have an hour to play, and you want to spend 30 minutes trying to get to where you're going and only have 20 or 30 minutes to do it.
Right, but I think get to where you're going is a little bit different. It's not like something like WoW, for example, where you have instance zones, or not instance zones. You've got the separated zones, and each of them is like just this level range, then this one's just this level range, and this one's just this level range. But instead that you're going to have the length and breadth of all of the easy/difficult, stuff to access within the scope of going to like the lowest tier nodes in the area versus the highest tier nodes in the area. And it's not something where trying to get to a specific location at a specific time is really going to be as big of a deal unless what you're trying to do is coordinate with a large group of friends that you plan to play with for a long period of time. And if not, if you've got 3 groups of friends that you plan to play with and they're all spread out, I mean, shoot, that sucks. You're not going to be able to play with all of them very conveniently.
Because EverQuest was so large.
Made.
So large. There would be times, literally, I would spend my evening game time running somewhere so that I could camp to be ready to log back in the next time I play. I just feel like that's just not really that's not fun. That to me, anyways. I don't think that helps with communication. I mean, who wants to be stopping every 5 minutes to type on their keyboard unless you have some sort of auto run, I guess. But
right.
Yeah, and then one other thing I was going to say real fast is another way that the world, being large or small, I think about in Dungeons and Dragons, the idea of, you go across the world map, you're going 6-mile hexes, and you might not even do a die roll every, but 2 of them or so. That's a lot of distance to cover. But then when you're in a dungeon, you're going, 5 feet at a time. You're just, creeping and crawling along. Then when it comes to a battle, the even more extreme dilation of time, considering you just went from, the town to the dungeon in 15 minutes, and then within the dungeon, you've been stalking around for 2 hours, and then fighting this thing for the past hour. That's, it's something that we see abbreviated greatly when we move to the MMO space. But in some of the things that are abbreviated in the dilation of going into a dungeon and fighting and all of that stuff being sped up, what ends up remaining is that it's going to end up taking a lot longer to go around because you have to actually move around in real time across a large world. You don't get to abbreviate that process in an MMO because that's not what MMOs are about. They're about being a big, expansive world that you have to travel around. Now, that being said, one other thing I'm going to say is one of the reasons why I stopped playing WoW, a little bit lower down the list than my number one, was coming to the realization that mounts and travel time and just having to waste time getting back and forth between otherwise static things in the world, it's a way that you're basically keeping asses in seats playing your game without actually offering them real content. I think this is a different experience because the world is dynamic. Everywhere you go is going to be a unique new experience. And so that issue of trying to get around in WoW and EQ and those other games is going to be minimized because interesting things are going to happen along the way. Just be willing to accept that the fun's in the journey, not just rushing to the destination.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, unless the destination is a party and the people who are going to be there aren't going to be there for longer than an hour, then that could be problematic. But yeah, and WoW is easier to get around much easier than EQ. EQ was set up just to stop you.
Nightmare
getting places. But speaking of traveling, I think Jalan also asked if player-made maps were still in or if they're shelved. And Steven says that they reviewed it 6 months ago. For now, it's shelved. Player maps are shelved, which is kind of interesting. The next thing I have in my notes, though, is Pathfinder. Shays asked on the Golden Feather. I think Shays said that all we have to do is just find his Steven's Pathfinder buddies, and maybe we could get them to reveal some lore from when he used to play via Pathfinder. But Steven says, no, I had all my Pathfinder buddies sign NDAs.
I'm sure he's got enough money to do that.
So that's pretty fun.
That's smart.
Yep. Shays is the guy that does transcripts like within 30 minutes of streams. So that's where I just copy pasted from some of those transcripts. So thank you, Shays, for your hard work. It's always much appreciated to get transcripts so quickly after the stream. We're almost out of time. I'm going to pull a couple from Dungeon Crawler Network with Agelos. He asked, do city ruins show up once Metropolis is destroyed? And Steven says there will be things that are present for a period of time following a siege, after which it will be a fresh area for the node to be resettled in. And he asks, is there anything that contributes to negative XP to the node besides inactivity? And Steven says, let's say monsters spawn around a node and attack the city. If those events are successful in killing certain NPCs or destroying certain buildings, it diminishes the node's ability to contend with nearby nodes, which will cause negative experience. And I think those are open world. So a rival node could reduce the amount of incoming experience by declaring war on a node and taking out key objectives. So it sounds like even if you successfully defend against the siege, some of your buildings could still be destroyed. So you still might have some negative effects, even if, it's not completely de-leveled, which is pretty cool. And that would be pretty cool to think about which buildings you're going to attack, and which guilds, maybe different guilds, would be interested in attacking different buildings.
I mean, part of it's also in the heat of the battle where it ends up flowing. are you even going to have that sort of agency to make those kind of decisions? Or is that one of those, you've won, now you get to do what you want sort of things? I have to imagine it's one of those things where, where you break through and, the surrounding area and where people set up and areas are destroyed because they've been set up there and then a mage blasts it or something. There's going to be a fair amount of destruction in the areas where the front lines end up being in the battle. And for somebody to then go and break off from that to target one specific building, it seems like a difficult and likely dangerous sort of thing, because you're going to be going beyond enemy lines into an area where if you're spotted, you're likely just going to be taken right out. So it would require a certain degree of either stealth or just having a large force of brutes that are just willing to break off from the front line for this other objective and then maybe meet back up if you succeed. There's always that risk to it. And I think it'll be interesting to see how people try to execute that. But ultimately, I think where people breach from is going to determine what gets destroyed, not like people looking at a bird's eye photo and be like, all right, this one, and this one. All right, hit them with the catapults, boys.
I would assume there'd be some planning ahead of time.
Sure.
Because going back to what you said too, Diggs, he had made a comment about disrupting supplies from buildings, right? Because that's where we talked about freeholds. So,
well, disrupting services, yeah.
Yeah, so I assume that would correlate to individual buildings that are providing different services. So I would assume that'd be part of your strategy, is trying to understand what some of those things do and try to attack them first.
The follow-up may lend some light on this. Didn't nodes get destroyed? Nodes get destroyed after losing node wars? And Steven says node wars and node sieges are two different events. So losing a siege destroys the node entirely. Node wars, or on the other hand, is more like a guild war, where a mayor may declare war on another node that puts the citizens in an open flag state of PvP with the other node. It doesn't destroy the node, but results in benefits for the victor and losses for the loser. Huh.
Wait a minute. So the mayor can decide, because this goes back to the question of forced, quote, forced PvP and corruption, right? That everyone seems to get all upset about. So that sounds like the mayor could force you to be an open PvP against at least a specific node as a war. And I would assume you would have absolutely no corruption associated with that.
Right.
That's interesting. That could really piss off a lot of people.
I guess if you don't want to participate in the
you
node
leave,
war,
you leave the node, but still, I mean, right? Because I feel like the only reason, because they're going to need a huge amount of PvEers to play this game, and I feel like the only reason people are interested in doing it, because actually, also earlier this week there was someone who we've Brad Power, who we've all kind of known for a while since Landmark, who had made a comment that I think it was maybe a massively OP post. What is the one thing that would automatically turn you away from an MMO? And he's always a PvEer, and his word was open world PvP. So and a lot of people, I think, agree with that. And he's sort of the player I would think you're going to want to come into Ashes to make this sort of function. And I feel like the only reason everyone is willing to at least consider the idea that are not traditional PvP players is the idea of corruption, that there's somehow a system to at least lessen the open warfare. So now if you're in a situation where a mayor could just go ahead and say, well, I don't really care. You're still going to have this flag against our neighbors. Who could they come over here and kill you? And there's absolutely nothing no detriment to them to doing that. That'll be a lot of fun forum posts.
Woodchip says this game has turned into a 90% PV game. I don't know if I quite think that, but okay, we'll see. I'm still optimistic enough to be interested in playing it to see what it feels like.
It is more and more getting sort of, but that's Steven, right? I mean, that's what he's always done, right? I mean, he's been in guilds that go to war with other guilds. So I mean, when you have the creative vision of a PvPer, I think that's a terrible idea, because I still think that even though the world is based off of conflict, that if you're talking about the scope that he wants, you're going to need, I would argue, probably the majority of your players to be traditional PvEers that will come in and do the traditional killing monsters, crafting, leading guilds. So if you sort of turn away that group, I don't know.
That's only if these things happen frequently. It may very well happen very rarely in the larger PvP things that are more than just dealing with the corruption folks. Is it's a rare occasion rather than something that happens all the time.
I would hope so, but again, the idea that you're maybe a leader that you did not pick, I guess that's more reason to go to war.
Go to a scientific node where you get to elect your leader.
Yeah.
At least vote on it.
That would suck, right? Anyways.
Yeah.
Personally,
probably why I would not
suck.
want to be a citizen of a military node.
Hell no. Actually, reading through the post on the scientific, I mean, that's clearly where I'll try to be. I mean, just from the crafting standpoint, the farming and all that. But.
Yeah. All right. Were there any other questions, or?
I think that can settle us for this week.
Okay.
And he's going to do more
good.
shows, correct? So we'll probably have some more to go on, and then the live stream as well.
Yeah.
So, all right. Yeah, we did go over. Well, thanks everyone for watching. We will be back next Friday with our Theory Forge Chronicles show. So. We will be back with this show in 2 weeks. Actually, no, we might change that, right? Because of the live stream. So
yeah,
anyways,
we might.
We will be back next week. I just don't know with what show. So everyone have a good weekend, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah. See you later, everybody. Have a good one.